You can release someone from your resentment without returning them to the position from which they wounded you. You must understand this, because many sincere people have been conditioned to confuse forgiveness with restored access. You were taught that if you create distance, you must still be bitter. If you establish a boundary, you must be punishing somebody. If you do not immediately welcome them back, you must not have forgiven them. But that teaching has sent wounded people back into destructive cycles before healing was complete and before character had changed. Forgiveness is not permission for repetition. There is a difference between an open heart and an unguarded life. An open heart refuses revenge. It refuses to become poisoned by hatred. It refuses to build tomorrow around yesterday's injury. But an unguarded life ignores patterns, dismisses evidence, and repeatedly gives precious access to people who have demonstrated that they cannot manage it responsibly. Your heart can remain tender while your gate remains guarded. Think of your life as a house with different rooms. Not everyone belongs in every room. Some people may receive kindness at the doorway. Some may enter the common area. A trusted few may be permitted into the private places where your fears, plans, family, and future are protected. Forgiveness determines what you release from your heart. Access determines what another person is permitted to reach in your life. Those are not the same decision. When you confuse them, chaos returns wearing the costume of compassion. The same arguments consume your attention. The same manipulation drains your strength. The same instability enters your home. Your peace weakens. Your purpose becomes distracted. And responsibility is handed back to someone whose words may have changed while their conduct has not. Mercy without discernment becomes repeated exposure. So establish this foundation now. Forgiveness may be given by one person because you can choose to release vengeance without anyone's cooperation. Reconciliation must be built by two people because a relationship cannot be repaired where only one person honors truth. Trust develops through evidence because confidence cannot be commanded. It must grow from conduct that remains consistent over time. This message will give you a practical framework for doing all three wisely. You will learn how to forgive without pretending the harm was harmless, how to establish boundaries without hatred, and how to recognize whether greater access has truly been earned. You do not have to choose between bitterness and blindness. You can be compassionate and clear, peaceful and discerning, merciful and governed. But before you decide who should regain access, you must understand exactly what forgiveness releases and what it never requires you to deny. Forgiveness releases your heart from the government of the offense. It is the deliberate decision that retaliation will not direct your conduct, resentment will not dominate your thoughts, and another person's downfall will not become the purpose of your life. You refuse to let what they did determine who you become. But forgiveness does not require dishonesty. You do not have to rename betrayal as loyalty. You do not have to call manipulation love. You do not have to reduce repeated disrespect to one harmless mistake. If it happened, truth must be allowed to call it what it was. Forgiveness does not alter the history of the offense. It alters the authority that history exercises over you. Some people believe that if you remember what happened, you must still be bitter. That is not necessarily true. Memory can become a prison, but memory can also become instruction. When you replay the injury to feed hatred, memory imprisons you. When you allow the lesson to strengthen discernment, memory serves you. Wisdom is not the absence of memory. Wisdom is memory that has been healed, disciplined, and given a new assignment. And understand this. Deciding to forgive does not mean the pain will disappear immediately. Forgiveness can be a moral decision made in one moment, while emotional recovery unfolds over many moments. You may have released the desire for revenge and still feel grief. You may have chosen peace and still need distance. You may have surrendered the offense and still be rebuilding the parts of your life that were damaged by it. Pain remaining is not proof that forgiveness failed. Healing has a process. The danger comes when you place your freedom in the hands of the person who wounded you. You wait for an apology. You wait for an explanation. You wait for them to admit what happened, understand the damage, and finally give you the closure you believe you need. But what if they never accept responsibility? What if every conversation becomes another accusation? What if the person you are waiting on is committed to a version of the story that protects them from truth? You cannot postpone your future until another person becomes honest. Sometimes closure is not a final conversation. Sometimes closure is the decision to stop organizing tomorrow around an argument from yesterday. It is turning your attention away from proving the wound and toward rebuilding the life. It is taking the energy once consumed by imaginary confrontations, repeated accusations, and unanswered questions, and investing it in healing, clear judgment, meaningful work, and relationships capable of carrying trust. That is forgiveness. Reclaimed attention, restored direction, recovered inner government, and consequences can remain. A consequence is not revenge when it accurately reflects what occurred and protects what has been entrusted to you. Distance may remain. A role may change. A privilege may end. Contact may become limited. You can wish someone no harm while refusing to expose your peace, family, calling, or future to the same unchanged pattern. So forgive without pretending. Remember without obsessing. Release without reopening. And once forgiveness is properly understood, the next confusion must be confronted. Reconciliation is not a private feeling. It is a shared process, and one person cannot build it alone. One person can forgive alone, but one person cannot reconcile alone. Reconciliation is not merely answering the phone again. It is not returning to the same room, restoring the same routine, or smiling long enough to make everyone believe the conflict has disappeared. Reconciliation is the deliberate rebuilding of a workable relationship after trust has been broken. And rebuilding requires two participants who are willing to stand under the same truth. A healthy conversation seeks clarity. It allows both people to speak, listen, examine, and accept responsibility. It does not demand agreement on every detail, but it requires mutual respect for reality. Both people must care more about what is true than about who appears innocent. But some conversations do not seek truth. They seek control. You answer one accusation, and another accusation appears. You clarify one event, and the subject suddenly changes. Your words are interrupted, your motives are rewritten, and your pain becomes evidence against you. Eventually, you become so emotionally exhausted that you agree to restore the relationship not because anything was resolved, but because surrender seems easier than another argument. That is not peace. That is fatigue wearing the mask of agreement. Forced peace changes the appearance of the relationship while leaving its government untouched. Contact resumes, but denial still governs. The family gathers, but blame still governs. The friendship continues, but manipulation still governs. Everybody celebrates the reunion while the same unresolved pattern quietly prepares the next wound. Reconciliation requires more. The person who caused harm must be willing to acknowledge what happened, accept that intention does not erase impact, and participate in a different pattern. They must stop demanding that one apology purchase immediate access. They must stop treating your caution as cruelty. They must stop asking you to forget what they have not yet learned from. Yet this standard applies to you as well. Boundaries do not make you incapable of error. Pain does not make every interpretation perfect. You must remain truthful, teachable, and willing to accept correction. You can protect yourself without becoming arrogant. You can maintain distance without turning distance into punishment. You can speak firmly without using the wound as permanent authority over another person. Real reconciliation does not require one person to disappear so the other can remain comfortable. And when mutual truth is not presently possible, you are not required to manufacture a relationship by yourself. Civility may be appropriate. Limited contact may be necessary. Distance may be the wisest expression of stewardship. You can wish someone well without inviting them back into your private world. You can remain free even when they never agree with your decision. A healthy connection should strengthen truth, steadiness, responsibility, and growth. It should not continually consume the attention you need for healing, family, purpose, and wise decisions. Relationships will sometimes require sacrifice, but sacrifice is not the same as permanent emotional depletion. Stop carrying sole responsibility for a bridge the other person keeps dismantling. Stop calling mere contact restoration. Stop mistaking silence around the problem for resolution of the problem. Reunion without truth is not reconciliation. It is repetition dressed like peace. But even when an honest conversation occurs, responsibility is accepted, and an apology becomes possible, another question remains. Does forgiveness automatically restore trust? No. Forgiveness does not automatically restore trust, because trust is not a gift demanded by the person who broke it. Trust is confidence formed by what someone has repeatedly demonstrated. An apology may open the door to repair, but it is not the completed structure. Words can acknowledge a failure. Only conduct can establish a different future. Anybody can appear changed during one emotional conversation. The evidence comes afterward in ordinary days, under pressure, through inconvenience, and when doing right produces no immediate reward. Time does not create character. Time reveals it. When serious or repeated harm is followed by immediate trust, explanation is rewarded before transformation has occurred. The person regains the same position, receives the same information, carries the same influence, and encounters the same unguarded places. Nothing has been rebuilt. The old cycle has simply been restarted by a new promise. You must stop allowing declarations to outrank demonstrations. Intentions can sound sincere. Defenses can sound persuasive. Promises can sound spiritual. But consistent action possesses an authority that language alone can never manufacture. If the change is real, life will eventually make it visible. And observe how a person responds to your caution. Someone committed to growth understands that patience is part of repair. They do not demand that you heal on their schedule. They do not treat a boundary as humiliation. They accept that what was damaged gradually most often be rebuilt gradually. But a controlling person becomes offended when forgiveness does not immediately restore privilege. They call your wisdom cruelty because they valued the access more than the relationship. Consequences are not always retaliation. Sometimes consequences are responsibility made visible. Financial limits may remain. Supervision may remain. Emotional distance may remain. A former role may not be restored. These measures can protect what matters while allowing truth to govern the process. This does not require you to become hard. Hardness refuses every possibility of change. Confidence observes before deciding. Hardness rejects correction. Confidence can listen, reconsider, and admit when judgment was wrong. You can remain teachable without becoming easily pressured. You can remain hopeful without becoming careless. Give time permission to speak. Time reveals whether new behavior continues after the apology has stopped receiving attention. It reveals whether patience survives disappointment, whether honesty survives inconvenience, whether calm survives disagreement, and whether responsibility survives when access is delayed. People do not learn to rely on you merely because you speak beautifully. They learn to rely on your steadiness. They watch whether your actions agree with your values, whether your promises survive pressure, whether your truth changes with the room, and whether your character remains governed when emotions rise. So ask yourself a difficult question. Am I restoring trust because the evidence has changed, or because guilt, loneliness, pressure, and fear of being misunderstood have become unbearable? Do not let discomfort make a decision that wisdom has not approved. Forgiveness may occur immediately as a moral decision, but trust should develop gradually, because trust is constructed layer by layer, choice by choice, proof by proof. And if trust is gradual rather than automatic, then relationships need more than the two settings of total intimacy or total rejection. They need levels of access. Access is stewardship. Your time is valuable. Your attention is valuable. Your private thoughts, emotional energy, physical proximity, family environment, and decision-making space are valuable. Love does not require you to make these resources universally available. Wisdom assigns access according to responsibility. There are 5 levels you must understand. The first level is humane regard. At this level, you release hostility, you refuse revenge. You recognize the person's dignity, but no contact is required. You are not plotting their destruction, monitoring their life, or rehearsing their offense. You have released them from your resentment, yet they remain outside the gate. The second level is civility. Circumstances may require brief, respectful interaction. You can greet them, answer a necessary question, or share a family space without hostility. But civility is not intimacy. Politeness does not entitle someone to your secrets, your vulnerability, or your emotional dependence. The third level is limited contact. Communication is permitted, but it is structured. Certain topics may be discussed. Certain times or channels may be used. Necessary matters may be handled without reopening the entire relationship. If the person becomes abusive, manipulative, or repeatedly violates the limit, the conversation ends. A boundary without a consequence is only a suggestion. The fourth level is tested partnership. Here, you permit small responsibilities and measured cooperation. You do not hand someone the entire future because they handled one conversation well. You allow character to be observed through manageable commitments. Can they keep their word? Can they respect a no? Can they remain steady when disappointed? Small access gives truth an opportunity to become visible without exposing everything you are responsible for protecting. The fifth level is restored intimacy. This is where deep confidence, private information, mutual influence, and shared responsibility live. This level belongs to relationships that have demonstrated truth, safety, patience, and consistency over time. Intimacy is not granted because someone remembers the old days. It is restored because their present character can responsibly carry what intimacy contains. Movement upward must follow evidence, not pressure, nostalgia, family titles, religious guilt, or one dramatic apology. And movement downward is not automatically punishment. When conduct becomes destructive, reducing access may protect your peace, your children, your focus, your work, and the people who depend upon your stability. These levels are not necessarily permanent. You may review them as reality changes, but do not promote someone because loneliness has become loud. Do not demote someone because of one misunderstanding that honest communication can repair. Review access with humility, but let evidence, not emotional urgency, govern the decision. A relative may receive civility but no confidential information. A colleague may receive task-specific cooperation without personal influence. A former partner may require complete distance. A friend demonstrating genuine change may regain responsibility gradually. Different relationships require different doors. And where contact repeatedly produces intimidation, coercion, danger, or severe instability, do not sacrifice safety merely to preserve appearances. Distance can be responsible stewardship. Seeking appropriate support can be wisdom. You are not obligated to expose yourself or others to danger so that outsiders can call the relationship peaceful. Stop treating every person as either an intimate companion or a permanent enemy. There is a wiser way. You can honor human dignity without surrendering private access. You can remain compassionate without becoming careless. You can review the door without abandoning the gate. Love does not require universal access, and wisdom does not require universal rejection. Now you know how much access can be permitted. The next question is more demanding. What evidence justifies moving a person from one level to another? Restoration must be observed, not announced. Real change does not need to chase you through the house demanding recognition. It becomes visible. It establishes a pattern. It allows conduct to speak with an authority that promises cannot manufacture. So if someone desires greater access, do not measure the intensity of the request. Examine the quality of the evidence. The first sign is clear confession. A changing person can name what they did without minimizing it, hiding behind good intentions, or turning their confession into an accusation against you. They do not say, "I'm sorry, but you made me." They do not apologize for your reaction while avoiding responsibility for their action. Truth does not need a disguise. The second sign is ownership of impact. Mature people understand that they do not control how deeply their conduct affected another person. They may not have intended every consequence, but they are willing to hear about it. They do not demand that your recovery move faster simply because their apology has been spoken. The third sign is respect for boundaries. This is critical. A boundary reveals whether someone values you or merely values access to you. If they honor your limit when that limit delays what they want, their behavior is supplying evidence. But if they punish you, threaten you, or become hostile because the gate remains guarded, they have exposed what they were truly seeking. The fourth sign is consistency. Truthfulness must continue when nobody applauds. Reliability must continue when no reward is immediate. Restraint must continue when emotions rise. Responsibility must continue when the relationship remains uncertain. Consistency is character made visible. The fifth sign is restitution. Where something can be returned, repaired, corrected, or made right. Sincere change accepts the cost. Words may express regret, but responsibility asks, what can I do to address what my actions damaged? Restoration that refuses every cost is often only regret seeking relief. The sixth sign is patience under scrutiny. A changing person does not weaponize guilt, family expectations, spiritual language, or manufactured emergencies to force the process forward. They understand that trust cannot be hurried by pressure, because pressure was often part of what damaged it. The seventh sign is stability under pressure. Watch what happens during disagreement, disappointment, inconvenience, and delay. Anyone can perform transformation when everything is moving in their favor. Character is revealed when the answer is no, the timetable is slow, and the boundary remains in place. Counterfeit repair looks different. It produces dramatic promises but resists ordinary discipline. It demands another chance but mishandles the chance already offered. It complies temporarily, then returns to blame. It explains repeatedly, presses urgently, and becomes angry when your wisdom cannot be rushed. Do not interrogate endlessly. Observe quietly. Silence gives patterns room to reveal themselves. When you stop supplying every answer, filling every pause, and defending every boundary, you begin to notice motives, contradictions, and reactions that excessive conversation once concealed. Then test proportionately. Give a small responsibility before a large one. Share limited information before private vulnerability. Permit measured cooperation before renewed dependence. You are not setting a trap. You are allowing capacity to be demonstrated. Do not become cynical and declare that nobody can change. But do not become careless and declare change before evidence exists. Leave room for redemption and leave the standard standing. Restoration is not proved by how intensely someone requests another chance. It is proved by how faithfully they handle the limited chance already given. Yet even when the evidence is clear, many people abandon their own standard when guilt begins to rise. So the next battle is not with the offender, it is with your fear of being misunderstood. You establish a boundary, the other person objects, and suddenly your decision is placed on trial. You become the defendant in an invisible courtroom. Their disappointment becomes evidence. Their anger becomes accusation. Their misunderstanding becomes a verdict. Before long, you are no longer deciding what is responsible. You are pleading for permission to protect what matters. Stop negotiating your boundary in the courtroom of guilt. There is a difference between communication and justification. Communication gives the information necessary for understanding. Justification keeps arguing for your right to make the decision. Communication says this behavior is harmful, so I will no longer participate. Justification explains, repeats, apologizes, defends, and keeps talking until the boundary sounds like a proposal awaiting approval. Over-explaining weakens clarity. The more reasons you provide to someone determined to resist the limit, the more material they receive to debate. They challenge one reason, so you offer another. They dismiss that one, so you revisit the entire history. Eventually, a simple boundary becomes an endless argument, and the person learns that enough pressure can make your no uncertain. Why do you keep explaining? Because you fear disappointing them. You fear appearing unforgiving. You fear being accused of changing. You fear losing approval. You fear that if they misunderstand your decision must be wrong. But another person's anger is not automatic evidence of your error. Sometimes people become most offended by a boundary when they benefited most from its absence. So learn to communicate a boundary with order. First, identify the behavior without exaggeration. When this conversation becomes insulting, it is no longer productive. Second, state the limit. I will not continue while I am being spoken to this way. Third, explain only what is necessary. Fourth, name the consequence. If it continues, I will end the conversation. Fifth, follow through calmly and consistently. Clarity without consistency trains people to ignore you. You may say, I will not discuss that subject. You may say, I am declining this invitation. You may say, this conversation is no longer constructive, so I am ending it. You may say, I need a period of distance before any further contact. No accusation, no theatrical exit, no speech designed to punish, just truth, restraint, and direction. Firmness does not mean arrogance. You can hear new information. You can accept correction. You can revise a decision if you discover that it was mistaken. But humility is not surrender to pressure. Teachability means truth can correct you. It does not mean everyone can control you. And after clarity, allow silence to work. Silence is not avoidance when the necessary truth has already been spoken, and further discussion only repeats the conflict. You are not required to answer every accusation, correct every interpretation, or manage every emotion your decision produces. Manage your integrity, manage your tone, manage your conduct, manage your responsibility. Let others manage their response. A boundary does not become cruel merely because someone dislikes it. Yet firm boundaries only protect the outside of your life. The deeper work is ensuring that, while the gate becomes stronger, your heart does not become bitter behind it. Do not accept the false choice between being naive and becoming bitter. You do not have to reopen every door to prove that your heart is clean, and you do not have to harden your heart to prove that your boundary is strong. There is a renewed identity available to you, compassionate but discerning, kind but governed, peaceful but not passive. Hardness and naivete appear to be opposites, but both can keep the offender at the center of your life. Hardness allows them to govern you through resentment. You replay what happened, prepare imaginary arguments, and carry their offense into rooms they never entered. Naivete allows them to govern you through repeated access. You ignore the pattern, silence your discernment, and return authority to someone who has not learned how to carry it. Freedom chooses neither. Peace is not something you postpone until every relationship approves of your decisions. Peace is an environment you protect while pursuing healing, purpose, and responsibility. A mind constantly occupied by conflict has less space for wisdom. It struggles to create, to lead, to recognize healthy people, and to make clear decisions because yesterday's argument keeps consuming today's attention. You cannot build your future while repeatedly prosecuting your past. Release the need to prove the offense to everyone. Release the need to win one final argument. Release the desire to expose the person so completely that nobody could ever misunderstand your decision. Universal validation is not required for responsible stewardship. Some people will never know the full story. Some will hear only one version. Some will interpret your silence as weakness. Let your integrity remain stronger than their interpretation. A soft but guarded heart wishes no harm. It refuses retaliatory speech. It tells the truth without exaggeration. It honors necessary commitments without volunteering unnecessary access. It observes conduct without becoming obsessed with it. It maintains distance without turning distance into a weapon. This is inner government. When your life is aligned with higher values, those values should become visible in your relationships. Truth should govern your words. Restraint should govern your reactions. Responsibility should govern your choices. Compassion should govern your motives. Order should govern your access. And remember, your peace may protect more than you. Your children may depend on your stability. Your spouse may depend on your judgment. Your colleagues may depend on your focus. Your calling may require emotional strength that constant chaos keeps draining. Guarding your inner environment can be an act of service to everyone entrusted to your care. You may remain hopeful that a person will change, but hope is not evidence. Stay open to genuine transformation without building present decisions on imagined potential. If change becomes real, it can be evaluated. Until then, let reality govern access. You are not wounded and waiting. You are not angry and avenging. You are clear, governed, teachable, compassionate, and free. Now forgiveness has been defined, access has been ordered, evidence has been established, and guilt has been confronted. What remains is a decision, a personal mandate to forgive freely, restore wisely, and guard faithfully. Forgive freely, restore wisely, guard faithfully. Forgiveness releases vengeance. Reconciliation requires mutual truth. Trust follows evidence. Access must correspond to demonstrated character. When these principles remain in order, mercy does not destroy wisdom, and wisdom does not corrupt mercy. Now identify the relationship in which you have confused forgiveness with automatic restoration. Do not think about everybody. Think about the one door you reopened because guilt spoke louder than discernment. Conduct a private audit. Name the harm honestly. Identify the access this person currently possesses. Examine the available evidence. Then ask whether your present boundary reflects wisdom or fear. Are you maintaining distance because the pattern remains dangerous, or because bitterness refuses every possibility of change? Are you restoring intimacy because character has matured, or because loneliness has made the old relationship look safer than it was? Tell yourself the truth. Stop calling repeated exposure compassion. Stop treating consequences as hatred. Stop offering intimacy where only civility has been earned. Stop explaining your boundary to people committed to misunderstanding it. Stop surrendering peace merely to preserve an appearance of unity. Then replace the old pattern. Release revenge. Speak truth. Reduce destructive access. Observe conduct. Honor genuine transformation when it becomes visible. Protect the family, work, purpose, and future entrusted to your care. The goal is not isolation. You were not created to fear every relationship, suspect every motive, or build walls around your entire life. The goal is healthy connection, relationship governed by truth, mutual responsibility, steady conduct, patience, and respect. The right people will not require you to abandon wisdom in order to prove love. They will help create an environment in which both love and wisdom can remain. Imagine what becomes possible when recurring conflict no longer consumes your inner world. The energy once trapped in replaying the offense becomes available for healing. The attention once spent defending every decision becomes available for meaningful work. The strength once exhausted by unstable relationships becomes available for disciplined growth and trustworthy connection. Your peace creates room for your purpose to breathe. So rise into mature stewardship. Be compassionate without being controlled. Be peaceful without becoming passive. Be forgiving without becoming foolish. Be teachable without becoming unstable. Be open-hearted without living unguarded. Release what hatred has kept imprisoned. Restore only where truth and responsibility are working together. Guard what has been entrusted to you with clarity, humility, and courage. Release them from the prison of your resentment, but do not hand them a key to a room their character is not yet prepared to enter.